Flames lick the edges of ancient tomes in a shadowed convent cell in Mexico City, 1694, as a woman's hand trembles over a pyre of her own making, books that whispered rebellion, instruments that measured stars, scrolls that dared to dissect the divine. This is no ordinary blaze. This is Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, consigning her mind's treasures to ash, her voice a silent storm, raging against the chains of creed and custom. What if one nun's ink had seeped into the veins of revolutionaries, igniting Latin America's cry for freedom a century before the barricades rose? What if her verses, brewed like forbidden elixirs from the herbs of heresy, had poisoned the roots of empire itself? Lean in close, for her chronicle isn't a sermon from faded missiles. It's a clandestine alchemy of intellect and insurrection, where every quill stroke tested the fragile truce between soul and scaffold, and one woman's vow to know shattered the silence of centuries. Her saga will uncoil in your chest like the serpent of forbidden fruit, compelling you to whisper, "In the forge of faith and fire, what truths would you burn to defend?" Envision the silver-veined haze of colonial New Spain in 1648, where the volcanoes of the Valley of Mexico rumble like the gods of old beneath Spanish spires, and a girl-child emerges into a world that prizes piety over prodigy. Born Juana Inés de Asbaje y Ramírez de Santillana on November 12th in the rural hush of San Miguel Nepantla, she arrives illegitimate, the fruit of a fleeting union between Spanish Basque Captain Pedro Manuel de Asbaje, a seafarer vanished like mist before her first cry, and Criolla Isabel Ramírez de Santillana, a woman of quiet lands and unyielding will who raises her on the sprawling Hacienda de Panoayan near Amecameca. No cradle of kings this, but a cradle of curiosity. Grandfather's library, a vault of 300 volumes pilfered from Europe, becomes her nursery. By 3, Juana devours letters like sweet tamales, teaching herself to read without primer or praise. At 6, she masters Latin, poring over Virgil and Cicero by candle glow, her small fingers tracing geometries that Euclid would envy. 8 sees her penning a Eucharist ode that silences hacienda elders. By 15, philosophy's thorny branches bend to her grasp. Aristotle's logics, Aquinas' theologies, the hum of Nahuatl tongues, from indigenous servants weaving Aztec echoes into her dreams. But stakes shadow her spark. In a realm where Criollas like her mother till soil, while Peninsulares hoard power, a girl's mind is a spark in dry tinder. Nurture it, and it warms. Unleash it, and inquisitors circle like vultures. Juana begs her mother to disguise her as a boy for university gates, but doors slam on dreams deferred. Instead, at 16, she barters her brilliance for a foothold. Lady-in-waiting to Vicereine Leonor del Carreto in Mexico City's glittering palace where chandeliers drip wax like tears of the oppressed. The court is a coliseum of cunning, 1664 salons, buzzing with poets and prelates, under Viceroy Antonio Sebastián de Toledo's gilded gaze. Juana dazzles, her wit a rapier in silk. She debates 40 scholars in theology, canon law, astronomy, medicine, music, emerging unscathed, hailed as the 10th muse whose tongue outpaces thunder. Suitors swarm like moths to her flame, offering titles and trinkets, but marriage's yoke chafes her unbound spirit. "I have no vocation for love," she confides, her heart anchored to the abstract. Equations that eclipse eclipses, harmonies tuning the spheres, yet peril prowls the peripheries. Whispers of heresy for a woman who quotes Plato over Psalms, who sketches anatomical riddles from smuggled Galen texts. To evade the noose of matrimony or the nullity of spinsterhood, Juana seeks sanctuary in 1667. The discalced Carmelites' austere cloister, where vows vow silence over study. The regime's rigor, fasts that fog the mind, hours on unyielding stone, crushes her like a vice. She flees after months, her quill starving for ink. In 1669, at 21, she chooses the Hieronymite convent of Santa Paula, a haven of relative leniency in the city's heart. Vows taken, she becomes Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, honoring a mystic namesake and the cross she bears like a crown of thorns. Here, no fixed toil chains her. She transforms her cell into a sanctum. 4,000 books line walls like vigilant sentinels. Astrolabes chart celestial rebellions. Lutes and harpsichords compose counterpoints to canon law. As archivist, accountant, teacher of novices in music and drama, she hosts a salon for Criollo elites, vicereigns like the Countess of Paredes, who smuggles her verses to Madrid's presses. Sor Juana's empire blooms. Sonnets that seduce with secular sighs, villancicos blending Spanish stanzas with Nahuatl rhythms for cathedral choirs, autos sacramentales fusing Aztec myths with Christian sacraments in El Divino Narciso. But genius gilds the gallows. Her pursuits pierce deeper. Natural philosophy's arcana, dissecting frogs and flowers in clandestine rites, probing the pulse of pulps and petals to unravel Galen's humours and Vesalius's veins. No mere dilettante, she corresponds with savants, her letters laced with queries on optics, bending light like bent knees to dogma, on herbal simples that soothe fevers or stir visions. In Primero Sueño, her 1692 masterpiece, a 975-line silver, unfurling like a dreamer's uncoiling spine, she alchemizes science into verse. The soul ascends through anatomical allegories, lungs billowing like sails toward forbidden horizons, blood's rivers, rushing revelations past the church's dams. Stakes swell with each stanza, publish, and patrons applaud from Seville's salons, probe too far, and Puebla's prelates plot. Enter 1690's Serpent, Sor Juana pens Carta Atenagorica, a scalpel-sharp critique of Jesuit Antonio Vieira's sermon on Christ's Passion, lauding her logic while lamenting a woman's audacity. Bishop Manuel Fernandez de Santa Cruz publishes it unbidden, appending his missive as Sor Filotea de la Cruz, a veiled whip urging her to renounce the profane for prayer. The republication is a trap sprung. Her words, twisted into treason, ignite the Inquisition's slow fuse. In March 1691, from her cell's confessional glow, Sor Juana unleashes Respuesta, a Sor Filotea, a 40-page thunderbolt, autobiographical armor and arsenal. She chronicles her cradle craving for letters, the court's gauntlet she gloriously withstood, the convent's compromise for knowledge's kiss. Citing Deborah's judgments, Theano's theorems, Christina of Sweden's scepter, she indicts the hypocrisy. Men preach women's silence, yet script their sermons from our silent scrolls. One can perfectly well philosophize while cooking supper, she retorts, flipping the flask. Domesticity, no bar to divinity. Intellect, no sin. This isn't mere reply. It's revolution codified, a clarion for Criollas chained to crucifixes, her elixirs of enlightenment distilled from the herbs of heresy, versus veiling critiques of conquest, plays plotting female fates unbound. The backlash brews bitter. Archbishop Francisco de Aguiar y Seijas thunders from pulpits. Her confessor, Antonio Núñez de Miranda, severed a decade prior for his meddling, resumes his lash. By 1693, whispers become edicts, cease the quill, or face the auto da fe's flames. Sor Juana, cornered in her cloister's cage, yields in 1694. Her library, auctions for alms, astrolabes and vials, vanish like vanquished visions, signed confessions branding her Yo la peor de todas, the worst of women, a performative penitence that masks her marrow-deep defiance. The consequences cascade. Her silence starves New Spain salons, her soul tomes seed secret studies in Criollo attics, fueling the Enlightenment's slow simmer. In April 1695, a plague sweeps the convent. Blue fevers grip on nuns' throats. Sor Juana, ever the healer in urban hypothesis, nurses without respite, her hands compounding poultices from pantry simples, her breath a balm against the void. On the 17th, at 46, she succumbs, her passing a quiet quake that buries her in San Geronimo's crypt, but unearths her undying fire. What if Respuesta's retorts had reached Bolivar's Caracas, arming his manifestos with a woman's unyielding why? Her verses, smuggled like contraband across oceans, whispered to independence's architects, Criollo pens pondering self-rule, indigenous echoes in her villancicos stoking the embers of revolt. Sor Juana didn't march on Madrid, but her mind's mutiny mapped the fractures, patriarchal pews crumbling under reason's weight, colonial cloaks torn by Criollo cries. Today, she adorns Mexico's 200 peso notes, her convent a university hearth, her words woven into feminist fabrics from Frida's fury to global gnosis, a polymath phoenix whose dissections of dogma birthed decolonial dawns. As the last ember of her pyre gutters to glow, let Sor Juana's unquenched quill quicken yours. She bartered bliss for books, bending bars of belief to brew a legacy that outlives inquisitions. If her retorts rouse the rebel in your ribs, tap that like to fan these flames for forgotten fires. Subscribe now to uncork the next vial, a dancer defying death on Scandal's stage. And in the comments, confess yours. What knowledge would you defend with your dying breath? Let your spark scribe the sequel. For in the end it's not the silenced who fade, but the scribes who summon storms from supper's steam.